Hey, welcome to Adventures with Peps. It's me, it's Peps. Today we are painting Jack Point from the Warlord Games 2000 AD collection. He is one of the Wally squad, and as you can see, he has a pretty cool outfit. As we go along, I'll tell you the paint I'm using and why I chose that paint. So let's go. First up, Xandri Dust. I ultimately decided this would be great for the trench coat and his hats. I just wanted that classic trench coat look. The idea would be towards the end, when I give everything a wash, this colour should just look really good as a trench coat. So for those who don't know, Jack Point is also known as the simping detective. Simps are people that dress however they wish. It's also kind of a religion in Mega City 1. For Jack Point, he decides to take on the persona of a clown and a private eye. It seems to let him move around the city pretty freely. And, well, he probably has one of the best get-ups in the entire comic series. As a character, I really enjoy reading the Jack Point stories. Also helps that he has a xenomorph type creature known as Raptor, who he can just whistle, and the creature will come along and pretty much munch on anybody that comes near him. So yeah, I'm just using a cheap dollar store brush, nothing fancy here. I'm just getting a good solid base coat on. I think throughout the process I maybe go over his coat 3 or 4 times in certain areas just to make sure that the colour is nice and flat. We'll quickly jump forward and just quickly put on a layer on the hat and finish up the arm. And then we will move on to the next part of the painting. As always, I fully appreciate a like and subscribe. Subscribes do a lot more for me. Recently I passed the 120 mark, which is amazing. I only plan to do 100, or hopefully reach 100 by the end of this year, so to hit the 120 mark has been amazing. But we gotta keep going, So you can see I've pretty much finished up the trench coat. Just cleaning up his hat brim. This brush is great for washes and contrast paints, which you'll see in a minute, but fiddly areas, it really isn't the best brush I could have used. But I'm a strong believer in one brush to rule them all. And for this project, I grabbed this brush and died by the sword. I just hung onto this brush for every stage. Okay, so this should be coming up to everything done. Give it a quick check over. Then up next, Ceramite White. One of the worst colours I own for white paint. As you will see, even though I shook it, it did not cover. Looked like it was on the brush. The brush has gone white. It took another good hard shake to get paint to actually mix. And then, as you can see, I probably barely covered what I was trying to do. This stage is completely just cleaning up the model. Get me ready for Guilliman Flesh. The classic go-to flesh wash for me now. As long as I've got a nice base coat of white on. Put this on a model, job done. I go a bit heavy on the eyes and the mouth and around the nose, because that's where the most shadow's going to kick in. Yeah, as you can see, it looks great. Just very quick, very easy. I love that paint. It's probably one of the best contrast paints they do. Especially for someone who hates painting faces. Then we move on to, I cannot pronounce that, yellow. It's basically what I'm going to use to represent his gold badge. I use this a lot on my Eldari projects. I collect Leviadon, and this paint is very good for getting a good solid yellow base coat on before I highlight. As you can see, I just run it around the edges of the badge. Make sure I've hit all the points, and then I also move into his oversized bow tie just to start getting some colour on so I can start seeing how I imagine the model will look. I actually go back and change up his bow tie a little bit later on, as you'll see. But for now, it just helps give me an idea of what colours I'm looking at. I think it was at this stage as I'm doing his pants that I realise, even though I love this yellow for a nice pale base, it's not the yellow I wish to use to actually block these colours in, because just looking at it, it's just way too pale. It's good on small areas, it's good on some larger areas like my Leviadon Guardians, but yeah, it just isn't bright enough. Right, now we're on to Dredd yellow. As I was saying, I felt the yellow was too pale, especially on his bow tie and trousers, so I used this one instead. It's very much a more, I guess, orange-leaning yellow, if that makes sense. It's richer, a little darker. Hits those creases up really well, as you can see, it really darkens them up. This feels more like the yellow I wanted, and because I'm doing the trousers and the bow tie in this, I actually find that it helps the judge's badge pop a bit more, which is definitely the effect I was going for. I should have just done the judge's badge and stopped. That's the joy of making it up as you go along. You learn from these mistakes. Yeah. Contrast paints are so easy to use. Slap it on the brush, put it on the model, let it dry. Very simple. After that, we moved on to Flesh Tearer Red. This is a tiny little dab. It goes straight onto his nose. It's the classic clown getup. I wanted to make sure that was the only section of red I took. I really wanted it just to stand out. Now he's a clown. After that, we went on to Contrast Black. Wanted to keep this simple as well. I'm using it on the hat brim. Not sure what that is called on a hat. But yeah, I just painted the band in black, made a bit of a mess, so I go back later and clean it up. This is where this one brush to rule them all really bit me. And then I go and use it on the feet. I did contemplate giving him, trying to think, bowling alley style shoes with the red heels and the red toe tips. The body stays white, but then I was looking at artwork of him, especially in Trifecta where they have some coloured panels of him, and the shoes are just your bog standard black leather. So that's what I went with. There we go, he's looking pretty good so far. We are about 15 minutes into the paint. This stage, I also decided to pick out the center of his flower. On the box artwork, it's like a creamy coloured flower, but I didn't like the idea of that. As you can see, there's the Contrast White out next. This is purely for his gloves, just to add some shadow and depth in. Not a big fan of white or painting white,
always find the paint lacking. This contrast paint also I find lacking. It is grey in my opinion. I find it's only good for shading, nothing else. I wouldn't want to paint a model white with it, trying to use that. Yeah, look at that. It's starting to look good in my opinion. Very good from 3 foot, let's say. Then I pull out the Flayed One Flesh layer paint. Use this on the chest to, I guess, lighten up the t-shirt that's going to be purple. Had some issues with the chest earlier on in the painting. I guess there was some release agent on there that I probably hadn't scrubbed off well enough. So the first time I tried to do the purple, it actually completely peeled off the primer. So I had to re-prime everything. It's also at this stage where I feel the badge needs redoing on his belt. So also hit that up with some Flayed One Flesh, just to give it not a pure white base, but a brighter, cleaner colour. Then I check to see the legs are dry, and grab the wrong paint. And then so with Creed Camo, my initial thought was to attempt to do some stripes. And as we will see, the attempt fails. Yeah, not everything you do works first time, and this is going to be the perfect example. This just did not work for me, did not want to go on nicely, and in the end, I think I made one too many mistakes and got a little frustrated and ended up painting the entire legs green. Patience is not one of my strengths, hence using contrast paints. So when something goes wrong, there you go. I'm just like, rah, paint the whole thing green. I'll come back to it. In the long run, it ends up working out for me. But what I should have done was stopped, walked away, took a breather for a minute and then come back to it, but that's not who I am. I don't get much time to paint, so when I have a chance I try to get everything done. I cut corners, and yeah. Anyway, the green doesn't look that bad. The fact that the yellow comes through quite a bit ended up working in my favour. I pulled out the Flayed One Flesh again. Picked out some details on the t-shirt. I just wanted to make sure it popped when I was doing the purple. Hit up the belt buckle, which is a smiley acid face. And then, now that I've got a thinner brush, I drew some stripes. As you can see, I'm a bit wary of where I'm going. Sometimes you have to accept you can't just one brush a project when you have to do straight lines. This just takes a few moments. I've calmed down, I've had a cup of tea, realised I have the tools, I should use them. There's no point forcing myself to not use a brush that I have just for the sake of speed painting. And just filling out the stripe, seeing if I can get another one in there. freaking out that I'd nearly caught the coat when I was doing this. At this stage, I'm still not convinced I'm doing the right thing here. I know he's meant to have stripy pants, which is why I'm trying my hardest to do it. But I'm finding it very frustrating. Really, what hindered me was doing the trench coat first. I should have done the trousers. Or I guess I should have worked from the bottom out. So I should have done the trench coat between his legs, then done the trousers, then done the outer trench coat. Here's my favourite purple colour. It's neon purple from a local dollar store. Giant bottle for about $1.75. As you can see, it is bright. It's almost pinkish. I just love using this colour. It's not the thickest of pigments, which is why it looks really bright right now, because I can only assume the flayed one flesh is shown through quite a bit. Then we go back to Sandry Dust, which, if you remember, we used for the coat and the hat. And I take a minute just to fix his hat and pick out a few extra points that just needed a dab of colour. At the end of the day, if you make an error, you can always fix it. A little bit of primer, get the original colour back, tidy up your work. Everybody makes mistakes. Then Flesh Terror Red. Was not meant to have been picked. It was meant to be the orange contrast. Classic. And then I tried to pick out the flower. Always forget what the flower's called that I'm thinking. They're usually around fall season. I think they come in bright yellow normally. But the model had a lot of yellow, so I wanted something that would just be a little bit different. So, Forget-me-nots? No. Mother Susan's? I'll look it up in a minute. Then we go back to Nazdrag Yellow. And I put it on his trousers again, and on the belt buckle. I am determined to have yellow stripes on the trousers. As you can see, it goes on quite nicely this time. I'm still not 100% happy with the trousers. I don't think I ever will be. But I am not going to spend the rest of the day trying to get these stripes perfect. It is what it is. There you go. Most of the main colours are now down. A little bit of Leviadon blue on his braces that hold up his trousers. Could have probably just got away with using the contrast black. But under the right light you can see that they're blue. It's just an extra pop of colour. He is meant to be a clown after all, so plenty of colours should be viewable on a model. Then I let it dry for a minute. Give it a check over. Back to contrast black. And I put tiny dots onto his bow tie. In his main artwork piece that you saw at the beginning of the video, he does have spots on his bow tie, so it felt only right to put them on.
This is a process that drives me nuts. Doing these tiny, fiddly little dots, and then I try and pick out his cigar as well. I love miniature painting, but I hate detail work. Give me rank and file troops every day where I can batch paint 20 of them and they look pretty from a distance. I'm very happy. Give me a hero figure. Ugh. The stress builds. I get frustrated. But yeah, there we go. Look at that. Base colours all in place. The main ones are there. The brown trench coat, the purple t-shirt, yellow badge, red nose, white gloves, black boots. We have a Jack Point. At this point he would be perfectly usable on tabletop, but there's always one stage I've got to do with my figures. No model is ever complete without a bath in dun 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 Agrax Earthshade, everybody's favorite. Just load up the paintbrush, slap it on. One of my favorite things to do on a model. Just get the trench coat, get the base. Sorry, the image is really blurry at this point. The camera is focused perfectly on the cutting board. Still learning my angles. Yeah, here you go. Slap it all over the base, on his arms, on the front. T-shirt, flower, hat, face, legs, boots, you name it. Cover it. It's just so satisfying. It's also at this point that I freak out quite a bit. I'm worried I've completely ruined the model. It's like, have I just completely undone all the work that I've done? Or is this actually going to pay off and work? It's just so glossy looking at this stage. It is terrifying. Right. Bit between his legs. And I leave it for a minute or two. Give it a little check over. I am worried about some pooling in some of the areas, so I just grab a little bit of tissue. See if I can fix some of the flooding. Also pick out areas that I want to look a little bit more defined and highlighted, like the edges of the trench coat, the badge, his face. Even though he's under a hat, I don't want it completely devoid of shading. Just gently pat in certain areas, just to lift off some of the flood. It also gives the coat a slight patchiness, as if it is actually a material and not just flat plastic. And there we go. He is now, as far as I'm concerned, done for a little while. I set him down, let him dry for a bit. Then we come back and with another wonderful dollar store purchase, just make sure the rim of the base is black. This really isn't fancy, it's just cheap black acrylic paint like an Applebee's or something. Couple of dollars. I don't want to waste Citadel paint on it. Citadel paint is way too expensive just to be using to paint the edges of your base. And with that, he is done. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Check me out on Instagram for some nicer pictures of the model. May go back and highlight some stuff, but I think that's it for now. Thank you for watching. Give me a subscribe and have a great week. Cheers.